What is up, NBA fans? Welcome to the NBA Outlet. I'm your host, Nick Fay. With me, as always, Kory Waldron. And back on the show, Dylan Jackson, back with OTG. Dylan, super happy to have you on. What's up, guys? How we doing?
I am doing good. Just got back from watching some March Madness. Ja Morant, he looks incredible right now. How are you guys doing?
I'm doing good. Dylan, obviously, when you were with us last year around this time, and then we parted ways for a couple months, and now you're back. Really happy to have you back on board, because obviously March Madness and all this draft stuff, this is your expertise.
Yeah, Dylan's probably one of the best young and upcoming draft writers out there. Kory, I thought you were going to give him a shout out for actually saying hello to you, because I know that's an issue for you with some guests.
That's true. Dylan did say hello to me. So Dylan, thank you for being one of the few who actually acknowledged me as a co-host on this show.
Yeah, I know. Jack kind of hates you a little bit, so
yeah, you get some friendly banter there.
Guys, as always, check us out, iTunes, Blog Talk Radio, OTGBasketball.com, Google Play, Dash Radio, and YouTube. We're going to touch on some March Madness stuff with Dylan here, talk a little Hornets. First, though, we're going to get into the Bucks injuries. Obviously, Malcolm Brogdon, about a week ago, is out 6 to 8 weeks with a foot injury. Now, Nikola Mirotic went down with a thumb injury, and he's out 2 to 4 weeks. How are you feeling about the Bucks right now?
I'm a little bit concerned. I wouldn't say that I'm maximum security lockdown. I wouldn't take it that far by any means. I think they'll still probably be the 1 seed out of the Eastern Conference, and hopefully they can get their guys back mid playoffs, like mid-May. And if they can, then they'll probably be the representative out of the East. I don't really see anything of that nature changing.
Yeah, I think the 1 seed is still locked up for them. I think they get through the first round. I think the real issue for this team will be, what do they look like in the second round when they have to get matched up against, the Celtics, the Sixers, or the Raptors. I already ruled out my Pacers, as you can tell. But I think when whatever scenario in that second round they're forced with, if they're missing Brogdon and Mirotic, I think that gives them an issue. It's going to give every other team an advantage. I'd still like this team to go deep in the playoffs, but it just brings up a couple more red flags.
Yeah, which injury do you think's more impactful? Brogdon going down or Mirotic? Obviously, Mirotic hasn't been there long, and he was a little bit injured when he first got there.
I'd say 1,000% Mirotic. He's just a guy that you can insert in your starting lineup, and he can stretch the floor. He's kind of your average defender, but he is so valuable to what the Bucks do, because Giannis always gets into the paint and can kick it out with ease. Obviously, he's a great passer, so having somebody there, I know they still have Ersan Ilyasova. He's healthy, I still believe, and so he could fill in that role, just not to the extent that Nikola Mirotic can.
Yeah, see, I'm on the opposite side of this. I think Brogdon's a lot more impactful. Obviously, he's been there duration of the season in the starting lineup, averages 16 points per game. But what they really like about Brogdon is the fact that he's probably the best perimeter defender on the team. Obviously, Bledsoe's a good defender, so is Middleton, and obviously Antetokounmpo is extremely tough to move on defense. But I think missing Brogdon, you're missing the defensive impact he has. You're also missing the fact that he also can hit the long ball, having one of his best shooting years efficiency-wise. I think Brogdon is the kind of guy you miss since you've started the season with him. And, for duration of the season, the starting lineup remained pretty healthy. And now you have him out. So I think that's probably the guy I'd miss the most.
Interesting. I think it also is probably a little bit matchup dependent. Obviously, Brogdon's been there longer. He's been kind of their glue guy. But if they matched up with Philadelphia and they're riding out with that big lineup that they have, I think you miss Mirotic. But against Toronto and Boston, Brogdon might be more impactful when you're facing more of a guard-heavy team. So something to keep an eye on. Do you guys think the rhythm for these guys coming back, obviously you have a first-round series, you have a rotation set, both of them, Mirotic could be back a little bit sooner, obviously, than Brogdon, but most likely both back in the second round. Are you concerned about maybe the rhythm of the team when they come back? Because obviously it's hard to come back from injuries, especially if you play a 7-game series in the first round, which they probably won't play a 4-game series, but still.
Yeah, I mean, I doubt it. Who are they going to have to play, like Orlando or Miami? I don't really see that being much of a challenge for either team. So, if they can get those players back in practice off of the, long series of days that they're going to have as a break, because in reality they're only going to play 4 or 5 games. You can get them in the gym, practice some more. I don't think it should be a huge issue for the Bucks. Maybe in the first 1 or 2 games in a series against, say, Philly or Boston, then maybe. But I still see them making it to the Eastern Conference Finals.
Yeah, I'm not overly worried about them coming back into the lineups. I mean, I'm more so worried about just the injury in general to Malcolm Brogdon. Obviously, plantar fasciitis is a pretty nasty injury. I know it was just minor, but for me, it'd be more so.
Lingers.
Yeah, it would be more so how does he look? But I'm not worried about him fitting back in.
And the positive thing about Mirotic, it was his non-shooting hand. It was his left thumb, so not a huge deal. But moving on from there, we're going to talk about Dylan's team, Charlotte Hornets. I know he's super pumped to talk about them right now. Currently the 10th seed, 4.5 games out of 8th. Dylan, before we get into playoff or tank or talk about Kemba, what's been the biggest surprise for them in terms of a positive?
I'm not sure that I can think of one. Actually, well, yeah, Devontae Graham has been really, really good for the Hornets. He's probably going to end up being our starting point guard next year, which is kind of sad when you think about it. But he was the 34th overall pick this year, I believe. We traded 2 second-round picks to get him, and he's been a really, really solid rotation guy for the Hornets when Tony Parker hasn't been able to play. So that's one of the more promising aspects of what Hornets fandom has been like the past couple of months.
Am I supposed to have a highlight?
Yeah, you are.
I mean, I like Miles Bridges. He's a guy who stuck out to me every time I've watched the Hornets this year. I think he's going to be a solid wing in the future. I love his athletic ability. I mean, it's been a really lackluster year for the Hornets. I'm really sorry, Dylan.
Bridges hates the rim. Every time he throws it down, it's like a monster dunk. I think for me, just going to the season, I didn't expect Tony Parker to play this well. Obviously, he's probably not going to be there long term, but still a surprise. Now, on the disappointing side, what's been the most negative aspect so far in your eyes, Dylan?
The most negative aspect would probably be the development of Malik Monk. I was super, super high on him in the 2017 NBA draft. I think he was 4th or 5th on my total board, and that's in a class that had Jason Tatum, Josh Jackson, Lonzo Ball, Markelle Fultz, and really that class has turned out to be really, really good. So he's had a couple DNPs recently, and it's mainly because of Borrego and his matchups. We're trying to make the playoffs, which is probably not going to happen. So really, Monk, who is really, really bad on defense, is kind of a negative in the rotation at this point. So not seeing him develop as much as he really should have at this point. I mean, he still is only 20, 21 years old, but I'd like to see a little bit more offensive firepower and consistency from him.
I think my disappointment would be just the entire scenario around Kemba Walker in this final year of his deal with the Hornets. Obviously the goal before the season started was to make the playoffs, was to, Kemba Walker was pretty adamant that he was going to resign. I think he probably still is pretty adamant about that. I don't know if that's changed. I'm pretty sure internally it's changed. But I think the lack of moves at the deadline to bring in talent, the lack of the offseason of making the right moves to kind of bring this team to the next level to help Kemba, want to stay there long term. I think that was probably the biggest disappointment, just the lack of building a team in which can successively win, especially in the Eastern Conference, where as we see, the last 2 playoff spots in particular have been pretty much up for grabs the entire year, and they still are right now.
Yeah, supporting cast obviously not amazing, but I agree. I thought Malik Monk was kind of a disappointment. If I'm not mistaken, he started the year pretty well too. A lot of people were like, "Oh, this is going to be a big season for him." Obviously, it hasn't gone that way. Dylan, do you still have confidence he'll turn into a good player, or are you kind of a little bit scared?
I've got my concerns, but I think he could still be a solid role player. Obviously, going into his rookie year, I was a lot higher on his potential. However, I still think he could be an NBA player. A lot of undersized guards don't really break out of their shell until 1 or 2 years down the line. We've seen that with Malik Beasley this year in Denver. We saw it with CJ McCollum a couple of years ago. He only averaged 6 points or so in his sophomore season, where in his third season, I think that upticked to 20 something points per game. So I think he still has the potential to be a solid role player and possibly even a starter. However, I don't see him ever becoming more than that.
Any thoughts on Monk, Kory?
I mean, I like his raw game offensively, but as Dylan mentioned a few times, I've seen him on the floor defensively. He just looks lost at times. And that's got to be an area where you improve on, especially when you have Borrego, who's from that Spurs coaching tree. Defense is massively important.
Yeah, and that was a concern coming out of the draft for him was defense. Now, Dylan, you kind of hinted at this before. You don't think the Hornets are going to make the playoffs? You think they should go the tanking route the rest of the season, or it's not going to happen?
Yeah, I mean, if I were general manager, head coach, I would probably shut down Kemba Walker for the rest of the year. Shut down some of the other older, more injury-prone guys. Most notably Cody Zeller, who's had a nagging knee injury these past couple of years, and Tony Parker, who's like 50 years old at this point. But I would definitely go ahead and start tanking right now, simply because, the increased lottery odds for teams later down the line increased dramatically this past year. So you're seeing like the 10 spot has like a 14% chance to get a top 4 pick, which is really unheard of. Because the past couple of years, I think it was more like a 1 or 2% chance that you jumped into the top 3.
Yeah, that's major. So to go full tank, more Frank Kaminsky minutes, right?
Dylan's boy.
I wouldn't put him in the rotation either. He's actually been kind of good recently, so can't have that.
I gotta be honest. One of my favorite things on Twitter over the course of this year has been your relentless attack on Frank Kaminsky, and the fact that he had like people in his inner circle tweeting at you. I gotta say, it was really entertaining.
Yeah, he had facts.
He had 2 sisters come after me. One of his friends, and then one other Wisconsin fan who had no connections to him. So I think I'm like the only person on their kill list or something. I don't know. It's kind of weird.
Number 1 Kaminsky hater right here. Yeah, and I think the fact is, like, they're 4.5 games out, and they'd have to have a really good stretch to end the season. They have a couple tough matchups, so realistically, it makes more sense to just tank, and the possibility of getting one of these great talents in case Kemba doesn't come back. Now, Dylan, do you think he's going to come back, or he's going to re-sign with another team?
If you had asked me 3 weeks ago, I probably would have told you there's like a 90% chance Kemba Walker comes back to the Hornets. But recently, I would say I'd put it more at like 30, 35%. I'm not really confident that he's going to come back, and I'm not really sure that the Hornets are going to make him an offer like the Supermax that he's going to qualify for, most likely. Because if he does make a 3rd team All-NBA, he qualifies for the Supermax, which is like $40 million per year. Nonetheless, if we do end up surrounding him with talent, it's not really going to be worth our time, because we won't have the talent to make a championship roster, if that makes sense. Like, we could bring in a second option, say Kevin Love. However, how far are you going to get with Kevin Love? And how long is that duo going to last, given Kemba Walker's almost 30 and Kevin Love is going to be 31 next year? So realistically, I'm not necessarily sure that bringing him back would be the best interest for the franchise in general. So you start looking at it, you got to really tear things down, because if you look at the roster outside of Kemba, he leaves and it's automatically the worst roster in the NBA, and that's not an exaggeration, because Jeremy Lamb is also gone on free agency. I think there's a non-zero chance that he comes back, but I highly, highly doubt that Jeremy Lamb is in a Hornets uniform next year. You've got Nick Batum, who's making $25 million next year. Marvin Williams is going to accept his player option most likely. MKG is probably going to come back, and Cody Zeller. So that's probably the worst roster in the NBA, unless somehow they win the lottery, which isn't going to happen because it is 1,000% rigged, and they get Zion.
You can always pray. Kory, what are you thinking?
I personally initially I thought Kemba would stay, because he was just really adamant about it, saying that he wanted to end his career in Charlotte. And I just think watching him on a nightly basis, where he puts up, well, not even when he puts up, basically if he doesn't show up, the Hornets get blown out, and then if he does show up, they somehow either squeak by or lose. So for me, I just think, like Dylan has mentioned, him entering the prime of his career, you're not getting any younger. I do think winning matters. And, the fact of the matter is, you're in the Eastern Conference. It's not a great conference, and you still can't get into the playoffs. And this year, maybe you're seeing a team like the Brooklyn Nets, who have been at the bottom of the East for the last couple of years, and they have already surpassed you now in the standings. Obviously, the Orlando Magic have a lot of young talent, and they seem to be on the rise. I just think for Kemba, it's one of those, like, I'm just over it type of scenarios. So I'd probably say I'm like 65% sure he leaves. I'll give them some some credit that I don't think he's just going to straight up leave. I think he does want to stay, but I just, if you want to win, I just don't see why you'd want to stay in Charlotte at this point in time.
And Dylan brought up a really good point, is it might not be the best idea for the franchise because of the way their salary cap looks as well. If they don't offer him a crazy deal, it's kind of easier for him to be like, oh, well, they offered me more money, or the Hornets really weren't that interested. So he doesn't look quite as bad. And I don't think many people would blame him for wanting to leave. What are some teams you think that could go after Kemba in free agency?
The Hornets beat reporter Rick Bonnell stated that the Mavericks had Kemba at the top of their board, which would be kind of insane given they've already got Luka Doncic and Kristaps Porzingis, but they do have a max slot. I could see them making an offer to Kemba Walker should he not be in the room on June 1 at 12 a.m. So I could see the Mavericks being in that race. I don't see the Lakers on Kemba's list. I just don't see that as the type of market that he's interested in. I could ironically see the Pacers, Kory, going after Kemba Walker. So there's plenty of teams. I originally had the Bucks on the list before they re-signed Eric Bledsoe. Other than that, possibly the Clippers or Knicks. I know the Clippers could have 2 max slots, so if Kawhi goes there, Kemba might possibly go there. I know they've already got Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Landry Shamet there. And the Knicks already have Dennis Smith, so I'm not too sure what the other possibilities would be. But I'd say the top 2 teams right now are probably the Pacers and Mavericks.
Yeah, I mean, I saw that Mavericks rumor too. That's just, to me, that's a weird fit. How do you feel about that, Dylan? I wanted to ask you this. Do you think that works, Luka Doncic and Kemba Walker, as both those guys seem to need the ball in their hands?
I see Kemba Walker as an off-ball point guard, I guess. He's a score-first guy. So I could see Luka being the primary distributor, and then Kemba Walker just working with the ball in his hands. Kristaps Porzingis is another kind of ball-dominant guy, so I'm not too sure how it would work out, but I know that Kemba and Luka are both unselfish players, so I could see it working out there. My main concern with that is pretty much only the timeline. Luka is like 20 years old. Kristaps is 23. And then Kemba Walker is probably going to be, I think he's 29 or 30 going into next year.
Right. Yeah, that's kind of how I felt too. And obviously, I had the Pacers on my list. I think the Pacers probably really go after Kemba Walker. We got a ton of expiring deals, as many people know, a lot of money on the book. A lot of money is going to be off the books and free. And I think, if the Pacers really want to take a next step, it makes sense to go after an elite point guard in Kemba Walker to pair up with Oladipo and Turner Sabonis. Aside from that, I think for like the Lakers, Knicks, Clippers, all those, like Kemba Walker, I think is maybe like the 4th or 5th guy on all their teams' list. Like if we don't get this guy or this guy, then we go after Kemba. I don't think there's a giant market for Kemba right now, though.
Yeah, I like the Pacers a lot, like you said, Kory, and I think it's like another small market team. It doesn't necessarily seem super interested in going the big market. Obviously, the Mavs have some interest. He could play off ball, like Dylan mentioned. And like you guys said, he's more of a backup plan, I think, for like the Lakers, Clippers, and Knicks. Obviously, he does have ties to New York, being from New York. So I think if the Knicks strike out, which is a real possibility, they could offer Kemba a really big deal and bring him home, like the hometown guy. Now, any other final thoughts on the Hornets and Kemba before we move on?
I'm trying to think. I don't know. As a Hornets fan, I don't think I would want to re-sign Kemba Walker if I were the general manager, just based on us being stuck in eternal mediocrity. We've been 36-36 past 2 seasons. It's likely we finish there this season. So I probably wouldn't re-sign him even if I did get the chance.
Yeah, I think it's fair just compared to like what they have. I think it's time for a rebuild, and obviously in hindsight, they probably wish that they moved him at the deadline and tried to acquire a pick or drop a contract or something. But talking about young guys, like we said, Dylan is a draft expert. Who are some guys that we need to watch during March Madness?
Yeah, I'd say like the number one guy, and I did mention to him before we came on here, is Ja Morant. He is absolutely electric. He is one of the better point guards that I've scouted, and it's kind of hard to find film on him, and I am excited to see some of the point guards he matches up should he make it past the first round, which I'm pretty sure he did. That game's still going on right now. But last I saw, Murray State had a pretty big lead on Marquette, so I think he's probably the number one guy that you want to watch.
Kory, any thoughts on him? I know you know a little bit more about college. I probably do a deep dive when it's like the last week before the draft.
I don't know a ton on. I don't know a ton. I take Dylan's word on a lot of this.
Obviously, Dylan, we're gonna want to watch Duke and all those guys. They got 3 of the top prospects. Who are maybe some like dark horse guys that maybe we should keep an eye on that could kind of raise up their draft stock? You know, there's always somebody every year that has a really good March Madness, and all of a sudden they end up going in the first round.
I like Matisse Thybulle out of Washington. He's a defensive wing, like 22 years old, but if he has a nice March Madness, if they upset UNC somehow, I could see him going in the lottery. He's kind of weird though. He's like a free safety in football. He just like kind of roams around the court on defense. He is extremely high steal and block percentages. Like I think it's record high actually.
Interesting. Anybody else in terms of like dark horse? I know we have also just quick shout out to the OTG team, the draft team. Dylan's part of that as well. Been doing top 10 players to watch in each region. But any other dark horse guys you think we should keep an eye
on? In terms of like smaller school type of guys, I would take a look at Vasha Pushika out of Northeastern. I think he already played and lost, unfortunately. But if I were you, and if I'm interested in the draft, I would go back and rewatch that game or go back and rewatch some Northeastern games in general this year. He's a fifth-year senior from Europe, and he is 6'5" and can just shoot the lights out of the ball. I saw him play live twice in the Charleston Colonial Athletic Association college tournament, and he was just playing incredible. He single-handedly pretty much won them their game against Hofstra in the championship game. So I would take a look at that guy. Other guys I would look at, probably Nikhil Alexander-Walker out of Virginia Tech. He's not really much of a sleeper, but he is like 13th or 14th on my board. He's kind of like a 1-2 combo. Pretty solid on defense and interesting scorer and can create from both the 1 and 2 spots.
So there it is, guys. You need to check on. You know, I'm not really even a huge March Madness guy. I'll check out a couple games if they're on, but mostly I'll start watching at the Final Four. Obviously, you know, follow Dylan on Twitter for more college draft stuff like that. But Kory, I'm gonna pass it to you, and you're gonna hit us with a game.
All right, so we're playing Guess the Line. This is, I think, the second or third time we've done this. Nick is undefeated, Dylan. So best of luck. Basically, what we're gonna do is I'm not gonna give you a player's name. I'm going to tell you his
You're
stats.
going to try not to give the name.
Yeah, sometimes I slip up. I'm not perfect. I'm human. But I'm going to give you the stat line, the shooting splits. I'm going to tell you the conference they're in, and then you guys will both guess. And then after you both either fail or get it, then I will, dumb it down to the division. And then if you guys get it, good. If you guys don't get it, you're dumb, and we move on. I'm just kidding.
Well, that was rude. I think we should kick him off right now.
All right. So first up, Eastern Conference. I almost said the name. I'm just staring at the name like, don't say it. All right. I averaged 17.8 points per game, 2.8 assists per game, 2.4 rebounds per game on shooting splits of 43, 39, and 90. Also a hint. Everyone on this list is a guard.
Interesting. So you said he averages 17, 2, and 2, and what were the shooting splits?
43, 39, and 90, and he's in the Eastern Conference.
Interesting. 2 and 2 definitely threw me off because, like, you're definitely a pure scorer if you're not averaging.
And also, the points per game is a career high.
Points per game is career high.
Which makes it, I think, harder.
Yeah, thanks, Kory. Thanks.
Like I would say Tobias Harris, but the rebounds would be off there, I think.
Yeah. He averages
and he's not a guard, so
there's actually one forward, but he's not. He's the third guy on this list, so don't worry about him yet. The first two guys I promise are guards.
Dylan, do you want to just take the hint right now?
No, not yet. I'm still thinking. It's in the Eastern Conference, 17 points per game.
I'm just gonna go with like JJ Redick right here, I guess.
Yeah, well, you're right. No, he's right. That's who it is.
Are you serious?
The 3-point percentage, I was like 43. He has to be like a really good 3-point shooter, but he really doesn't have much else to his game at this point. Obviously, he's not driving to the paint, getting a lot of shots, and the 2 rebounds and 2 assists. He did have his first career triple-double last week, though.
Yeah, and true story, he really is averaging a career high 17.8 points per game. That's the highest of his career this year.
My guess was going to be Evan Fournier.
That's a good guess.
That would have been a good guess.
I think his assist numbers might be a touch higher if I had to guess.
All right, so next up, Eastern Conference, 23.7 points per game, 4.5 assists per game, 4.7 rebounds per game on shooting splits of 47, 37, and 83. Who am I?
That's a really good season.
I'm going to say Bradley Beal.
No.
Ooh.
Kory, could you repeat the shooting splits for me one more time? 47, and what was the other one?
47, 37, and 83.
And he averages 23, 4, and 4?
Yep.
I'm gonna let Nick guess first because I already guessed.
Yeah, you're gonna give me an extra hand here. 23. That's a pretty good season. I'm trying to think here. Kyrie Irving?
No.
That was gonna be my guess.
Next.
He's gonna
it's Central Division.
Central Division. See, I don't know my division, so that doesn't help.
All right,
Central Division is Milwaukee.
Milwaukee Bucks, Indiana Pacers, Detroit Pistons, Chicago Bulls, and the Cleveland Cavaliers.
Oh, Zach LaVine.
Yes.
Yeah. Damn.
All right. Next up, Western Conference. This is a forward.
Okay.
18.5 points per game, 2.7 assists per game, 5.6 rebounds per game on shooting splits of 46, 30, and 74.
Danilo Gallinari.
No. Good guess though.
Kory,
His 3-point percentage is in like the 30. I think it's like 38, 37.
Yeah, it was like around the cusp of 40. Kory, repeat this. I know I'm annoying.
Shooting splits?
Yeah, again.
Yeah, it's 18.5 points per game, 2.7 assists, 5.6 rebounds on shooting splits of 46, 30, and 74.
Rudy Gay?
No.
Kyle Kuzma.
Yes.
Damn.
You didn't have, it was Kyle Kuzma. I was surprised that he was shooting 30% from 3. I thought he was shooting slightly better, so that was a little curveball. Next up, Western Conference again, 21.3 points per game, 2.9 assists per game, 4.0 rebounds per game on shooting splits of 46, 38, and 83.
And
What was guard?
Yeah, this is back to the guards. Kyle Kuzma was the only forward on this list.
All right.
Shooting splits one more time?
46, 38, 83.
Lou Will?
No. Good guess. Because good guess.
Is this? I don't know. I would say Dame, but the assist numbers seem off.
Yeah. I'm not helping you anymore.
It's definitely not Dame. I can tell you that.
This is, I don't know.
Give me the stat line one more time.
21.3 points per game, 2.9 assists per game, 4.0 rebounds per game on shooting splits of 46, 38, and 83.
This one's tough.
Yeah. What are we tied right now? We tied 1-1, 2-1?
No, 2-1, Dylan.
Oh, this is okay. So we have to put a shot clock out.
Is this I mean,
you guys got one more round. Just let it rip.
I can't, no, not yet.
We're gonna get a hint. So if you
is this DeMar?
No. All right, we are in the Northwest Division.
CJ McCollum.
Yes. 2-2.
See,
let me think about it too long.
Much higher.
When you said Dame, I wanted to be like, ooh, you're right there. You're right there. All right. Last guy. Unless you guys both missed on both guesses. Western Conference, 20.3 points per game, 5.3 assists per game, 3.0 rebounds per game on shooting splits of 43, 35, and 88.
Donovan Mitchell.
Who said what?
I said Lou Will. He said Donovan Mitchell.
It's Lou Williams. Nick wins. Nick remains undefeated. Damn, Dylan. Come on, you had him.
I was close.
You did. Close. You had me. I mean, I really had to ponder. As soon as you gave me all that time to think about all the players in the Western Conference, I was like, okay, well, now I'm like starting to like separate assists and numbers and all that. But
Well, it's funny when you said Lou Williams for CJ McCollum, I'm like looking down at my notes. I'm like, man, the numbers are pretty close.
I was like, yo, oh god, I'm taking a risk here using the same name, but like it's happened to me before. We've done this where I've like used it and I didn't go back to it. And I was like, all right, Donovan Mitchell was gonna probably be my second guess though.
I think his points per game are slightly higher, but the assists and rebounds I think are almost exactly the same, and even the shooting splits. I think he averages like 23 points per game though.
Hey,
I think, and that's it.
You pushed me, Dylan. You pushed me. So Kory hypes me up for being undefeated a little bit more than myself, but that's okay. Any other topics you guys want to touch on before we get out of here?
RJ Barrett.
Go ahead. Go. I want to hear this. Go.
All right. RJ Barrett is a better prospect than Zion Williamson. Not a better player, but a better prospect.
That's what I want to hear because that's exactly what I think. Yes. That's validation. That's what validation feels like.
Yeah, I have no thoughts on this. Obviously, I haven't watched enough of RJ Barrett. Obviously, Zion is the major hype, just being an athletic freak. What's the reasoning behind it, Dylan?
RJ Barrett has a path to NBA stardom. Zion Williamson does not yet. His skill set is widely unknown. He doesn't really have an NBA comparison.
Yes. Do you think Zion has a higher ceiling, but there's a higher probability that RJ Barrett's going to be a better NBA player? But if Zion were to figure it out, he'll be substantially better?
I think if Zion learns how to play NBA basketball, then yes. But my whole issue with Zion Williamson is, I don't think he has the it factor, meaning I don't think he can win you a game in the last 2 minutes. And B, I don't think he can perform consistently at the NBA level at his current frame.
I agree. He's shorter than I thought, right? Isn't he like 6'9"? How tall is he?
He's 6'7".
Right, and that doesn't that's I can do a little rant now. Duke, I watched a decent amount. The one thing that I've been worried about Zion is the fact that I think he's incredibly athletically gifted. He's got a lot of strength and all that, but he's 6'7", and he is clearly not a small forward. But he's got the size of a power forward. I just think he doesn't fit. And if he doesn't develop a steady jump shot, I know he's hit threes and all that. But if he doesn't develop like you said, an NBA-like game, then I don't know how it would translate. Whereas RJ Barrett already has the tools. Yeah, he may be a little bit tunnel vision at times, and you can make some not a decent passer doesn't like to pass. I think his trajectory, like you said, is a lot higher. But I think Zion just has, a long way to go when he comes to the NBA. Like, I can't imagine him starting and being effective in the NBA his first, 2-3 seasons.
So any more hot takes or takes that are going to get us negative reviews on iTunes, or you guys got anything else?
No, but I do want to continue this RJ Barrett conversation just a little bit. I want to touch on his game just a little bit more because I think he's honestly like James Harden just a little bit. I'm not saying he will ever be James Harden or a caliber of that player. However, he has shades of James Harden, meaning he can take over a game. He can win it in the last, 3 minutes of a game. When you're watching Duke, I went back and watched multiple Duke games, all the close ones, as a matter of fact. And the ball is always in the hands of RJ Barrett. And that's not a matter of him not being willing to pass the ball. It's a matter of Duke trusting him the most. And I've noticed that pattern far, far more often than his tunnel vision. For instance, he's the only player in that starting lineup that can consistently hit the three-point shot. RJ Barrett is the only one that can do that. Trey Jones is more of a defensive playmaker. Zion Williamson is an athletic guy. He's the most athletic player I've ever watched. And Cam Reddish has just been wildly, wildly inconsistent from the three-point line and really just as a player in general. So when you're looking at playing on the perimeter at Duke, the only effective player from there has been RJ Barrett. And I think that is what people are not taking into consideration. And I do think Coach K needs to do a better job of just incorporating each big guy, big recruit's skill set more seamlessly, because at the moment, I don't think that they could win the tournament because of that.
Interesting. So obviously something to keep an eye on if you're watching Duke the rest of the tournament. Kory, anything else you want to throw in there?
No, I think he hit the nail on the head to wrap up the RJ Barrett talk.
So Dylan ended it with some spice. Guys, give a quick shout out to yourselves where they can find you on Twitter and find your work.
at Dylan Jackson NBA. I changed it from Jackson NBA because I think that's the reason I didn't have like 100,000 Twitter followers by now.
Very important. Does it still have the X?
It does not still have the X. It's just Dylan Jackson. DYLAN.
You lost a little bit of the hype right now. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
You used to be the X Factor. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at KWalHoops. That's KWAL Hoops. And also be sure to check out off_the_glass on Instagram. I'm trying to boost that up. And be sure to check out the Full Access Hoops podcast.
Always, guys, a pleasure talking hoops with you. As always, thank you everybody for listening. Check us out, iTunes, Blog Talk Radio, OGBasketball.com, Google Play, Dash Radio, and YouTube.